At the age of 64, he decided to get on his bike and ride across Canada and make a movie about it. Paul Perrier is my guest today.
Reluctantly.
This podcast is brought to you by homegirls.ca, a top producing team at Remax Professionals, and Northern Alberta Heating. With work in and out of Edmonton, they're looking for sheet metal workers. Send resumes to tim@northernheating.ca. Now, let's get to the show.
Reluctantly.
Thanks for having me, Terry. Nice to meet you.
It's a pleasure to meet you. And first of all, how's your ass?
Surprisingly good. Tight.
I can't imagine anybody at any age riding across Canada. And I know that there have been plenty of people who have done it. And of course, probably most famously, Terry Fox is, with his attempt to run across Canada with the Marathon of Hope, and the endurance and all of the things that come into play with trying to do something like that. What kind of training, first of all, did you have, if any, to ride your bike 5,000 plus kilometers?
I didn't train for this at all. I love riding bikes. I've been riding a bike since, I was 6 years old, but I had never gone on a bike tour, let alone a solo tour. Last January, I published a memoir. I'm a photographer by trade, and I started making documentary films 25 years ago. It wasn't planned this way, but my work sort of revolves around addiction and mental health. I made a film 20 years ago about a drug addict. It wasn't planned, and it cost me $45 to make. I released it, and it sort of took on a life of its own and really helped a lot of people. I always thought I've lived a creative life. I've had plenty of crazy experiences with it, really interesting people, being a photographer and a filmmaker. I published my book, and everybody can publish a book now, so it's hard to get it out there. And I thought, well, maybe if I rode across Canada on a book tour on my bike and tried to bring awareness to mental health initiatives, that would be an interesting idea, and make a film about it I didn't know what I was going to capture, but what I did capture lends itself to, I think, a pretty interesting documentary.
Well, so for the last basically 2 minutes, you have spanned basically a quarter century. 25 years, and kind of brushed over just like the meniscus of everything that you've done. And should we start with 2007 with Cracked Not Broken and go from there kind of thing? Because I think there's a process that has to happen here to explain how we got to the point where last summer you rode your bike 5,000 kilometers.
Right. So, yeah, look, I was born and raised in Montreal. I moved to Toronto in 1991 to pursue my photography career. Back then, it was actually photography. It wasn't digital photography. It was still film. I moved here, started shooting commercial stuff, anything I could do, built up a pretty good business. But when the iPhone came in 2007, that created a big shift for professional photographers, for sure. When I was in university, I was taking general arts, and I was just bored with school. So a buddy of mine one night at a beer bash said, I'm going to Europe in September. Do you want to come? And I went, what a great idea. So I quit university, went on a 7-month backpacking tour of Europe and the Middle East and I did Morocco. And I took a camera with me, and I'd been taking pictures since I was 12 years old anyways, but I brought a camera with me to document my trip. And on that trip, I took I think I took about 11 rolls of film. And when I got home, I looked at all the pictures, but one of the pictures really, I went, wow, if I can take a that good a picture, maybe I can do something in photography. So I studied photography for a couple of years in Montreal, but part of my problem with Montreal was the language issues.
Right.
I mean, I have a French name and I speak French,
So
and
basically, you're speaking restaurant French is what you where you were at as far as the level of.
yeah, French and English, which they do in Montreal anyways. But
Mhm.
yeah, but Toronto was sort of where most of the business was happening, and I figured, well, if I'm going to try this, I might as well go where, yeah, just plugged away, did anything I could, everything I could. I mean, I shot everything, from magazines to corporate headshots to actors and actresses, sports figures. So
Some of the people that you were photographing back in the day, you mentioned, movie stars, sports figures, that sort of thing. In your initial email, you said you had photographed some, like you photographed Sam Kinison. Did you photograph him and then have the opportunity to be a part of his world at all, or meet him, or anything like that, or
no.
no?
So one of my first jobs after graduating from photography school, when I was in Montreal, I was hired to shoot just for Last Festival. It had been going a couple of years ago, but it wasn't what it grew into be. So at the time, I think I was one of the only photographers doing it. So I sort of had a pass to go wherever I wanted to. And but yeah, I saw Kinnison, and it's one of my favorite photographs. And it was shot, I think a year and a half before he ended up getting killed in a car accident. And these are stories I write about in my book. I mean, the picture I took of him it almost looks like he could see that the end was coming in the
Mhm.
photograph. But I didn't have a relationship with him other than photographing him.
So from 91, Montreal, move to Toronto, start doing your photography, getting really good at your craft. What takes you from the year 2000 to 2007, and then all of a sudden you jump into a documentary?
Right. So, yeah. So I was invited to my high school reunion, wasn't planning on going. And then I thought, oh, this might make a really interesting documentary. I hadn't seen anybody in 22 years. And I thought, if I go back as a photographer, shoot portraits of people, interview them, from where you've been at the age of 17 to the age we were turning 40 at the time.
Right.
I didn't have any experience, but I just thought I'm going to try it. So I did a little fundraiser, hired a friend of mine who had graduated from film school to come shoot it, and I went back and shot my reunion. And a year later, it was televised on CBC.
So you have your film about your reunion, and
Yeah.
then from there, how do you get to Cracked Not Broken, the film of the documentary about Lisa and addiction and mental health and all of the things that go with that?
Well, I tried to, I pitched a whole bunch of ideas and nothing was really being picked up. So I have a friend who had quite a serious addiction issues, who worked in the music business in Toronto. He asked me to get involved in a project that he was working on, and I decided to help him. And what it originally was pitched as never worked out, but what I ended up documenting was his addiction because I was around him quite a bit. And after about a year of doing that, I was getting a bit tired of it. And I put together a little piece, like I wanted to help him because he was kind of spiraling out of control. And I thought that maybe what we had shot could help people. And I approached him with it, and he wasn't interested in doing it. I was married at the time, and one of my wife's oldest friends, Lisa, was having her own struggles with addiction. She was at our house for dinner one night, and she was being very open about where her life had gotten to. And I asked her if she'd look at this piece that I put together about my friend, just to get, I was interested in getting someone who had lived that life, their opinion on it. So she looked at it, and it was like an 8-minute little film.
This was on your with your buddy as the
Yeah,
subject.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So she watched it, and when it was over, she said, "Yeah, you've captured what it's like to live as an addict in society." And before she left, she said, she was clean at the time. She said, "If I ever go back into it, I'll call you one day and I'll let you interview me." My initial reaction was, well, I hope I don't get that phone call, because I hope you continue with your sobriety. But 6 months later, I hadn't heard from her, and I got a call one afternoon, and she said, "You want to come interview me?" She sounded like she was needed somebody to listen to her, and I wasn't certainly wasn't planning on making a film. I just thought I'll go down and record it like she wanted it to. She was in a hotel room on Bay Street, living there at the time, and I went down. I only had a little digital camera. I didn't take any lights or microphone. I just went with what I had near me, and I spent 45 minutes in the room talking to her about her life. And when I got home and looked at it that evening, I was like, I was shocked by it all. But what really shocked me was I thought, man, you could put a title on this, let it run as is, and it's such a powerful, educational, shocking film about a drug addiction.
Well, having a compelling aspect like that and having it told from the first person is something that's very rare, probably as well, right?
Right. You're right. And she's very intelligent. She's a beautiful woman and did not fit the stereotype of a crack addict.
So you put together the entire documentary with 45 minutes of footage of a Q&A with her in her hotel room, but
90% of the film is the interview in the hotel room. To set it up, I interviewed my wife about their friendship, which was about a minute and a half of her. They talk about their relationship. And the ending of the film was the first screening we did of the film at the Regent Theatre in Toronto. And when I pitched the film, most people rejected it, saying, "Oh, you need to interview professionals and you need to interview other people." But my feeling was, no, this is a standalone piece that's been done before. What was powerful about this was that it wasn't planned. It's almost a real time film, other than the interview with my wife. And then when I approached her, I didn't think she'd want this footage to get out there, quite honestly. But I approached her saying, "Listen, Lisa, I think this film might be a good tool for you to use if you want to get clean. And if it doesn't accomplish that, I believe your story can help a lot of other people, addicts and family, friends of addicts." Especially back then, it wasn't talked about that much. Now it's much more in the open. But when I presented this, drug addiction was still let's not talk about it. So she agreed, and we decided that we'll show it to family and friends and colleagues. So I rented a theater in Toronto. She came to the screening. We showed a rough cut of the film, and at the end, she got up on stage and answered questions. And that's the first screening, is the end of the film. So it was her putting her story out there. After I re-edited that into the end of the film. And then 9 months later, Lisa was sitting on Oprah Winfrey's couch talking about Crack Not Broken. And
your film that nobody would pick up was all of a sudden catching the attention of Oprah Winfrey, and she had Lisa on this.
I pitched it to everybody in Canada, and I can understand why it wasn't. I mean, like you say, that like people who take in these films, there's kind of not a formula, but they're expecting, you need all these things. But I just, for some reason, I felt you didn't. When we screened it, and we ended up screening it in high schools. Lisa would come to screenings, so it was keeping her busy. She was helping people, which is, I believe, was all part of the getting better process. A lot of addicts who get clean help other addicts, so that's part of the 12-step program, right? It ended up getting quite a bit of press in Toronto from doing interviews on Sounds Like Canada and newspaper and radio interviews, and it was beginning to get a lot of attention. I mean, it was kind of strange. Lisa at the first screening said, on camera, it's not in the film, she said, we're going to get to Oprah Winfrey. And she ended up writing a letter to Oprah Winfrey. We sent it in, and it was about 6 months, but we ended up on the show. And then after that, one of the people watching that episode was someone named Sheila Nevins, who was head of documentaries at HBO. And she saw the interview, and at the time she was working on a series called the Addiction Series. She got in touch with us, and Cracked ended up being one of 4 independent films that was selected to run it alongside the Addiction series in 2007, which ended up being this huge award-winning series. And
With this being released 18 years ago, it's still available, though, today. People can catch it on Apple Plus TV?
it's on Apple TV, yeah.
Apple TV, okay.
Yeah.
And where is Lisa today?
She's still in Toronto. She ended up cleaning up her act. It took a few years, but I believe the film ended up being kind of this reminder of a time that she's not particularly proud of. And she kind of distanced herself from the film and from me, which is a shame. But as far as I know, she's clean and sober and living a healthy life.
And it seems like it may have saved her life.
It definitely changed her life.
Okay.
For sure. And, well, yeah, who knows?
Paul, you seem like a modest, like a humble guy, and it's not going to say, yeah, I saved her life. But if from somebody who doesn't know Lisa, doesn't know the situation, just hearing this for the first time, it may have been something that ended up not letting her go down a path that could have been inevitable. And it may have led her to something as simple as being at one school and saving one kid from becoming an addict in one way or another.
100%. And I know that when she saw the footage for the first time, because that's in the film too, I shot her watching the film. That changed. Like, she finally saw herself where she was. And for sure that changed her mindset. And I believe the feedback that we were getting from screenings and from kids, and it might just be 2 people in a room talking, but it's a heavy, heavy film.
Right.
And I didn't cut anything else out of it. Like, she was high. She gets high in the film and injects crack cocaine. So she was on this whole trip, and I didn't cut it. She injects crack cocaine. That scene, which lasts about 5 minutes, I barely made it shooting it, and I still have trouble looking at it. But that is we were showing that to kids, and I can tell you, it's part of my book, part of my memoirs. My memoir is called Cracked Wide Open, because that afternoon where I went down to that hotel room and walked in a door and came out that door 45 minutes later changed my life dramatically, from what I witnessed and from what happened after that.
Reluctantly.
Reluctantly podcast is brought to you by Northern Alberta Heating Limited, specializing in commercial HVAC. And Corey tells me that they are busier than a fox in a chicken coop right now with all the business they can handle and then some. They are looking for motivated, long-term employees who want to work for a great company. Are you an experienced sheet metal worker? Are you looking for a new outfit? a change for the better. Maybe the place you're at isn't the right fit for you. And maybe you know somebody who's an experienced sheet metal worker. Well, let them know about this. Send resumes to tim@northernheating.ca. They're looking for new people, first-year apprentices, second-year apprentices, and younger journeymen. There are also positions for entry-level with training available too. They have work both in and out of Edmonton. If you've got these qualities and qualifications, get your resume together and send it off today. There's jobs awaiting, and that tin ain't gonna bash itself. Email tim@northernheating.ca to kickstart something new or a change for the better.
Reluctantly.
From the documentary and Lisa and all of the things that happened after that, I was going to say it had to have affected you in a certain way, emotionally, physically, psychologically. And is that what led you to go from Cracked Not Broken to Cracked Wide Open, your memoir, where you could deal with the things in the way that it affected you?
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I believe I'm a pretty strong guy. And when this got as big as it did, I was being bombarded by people telling me their stories and saying, you should do a film about me. Hearing these stories, and it's traumatic. It took, you know, took years, but I wanted to tell my story, my side of the story, which is different. Like Lisa was the main part of that story, as she should have been. All I was a witness to it and believed that this footage should get out there. But yeah, there's trauma for sure.
Did any of the experience with the making of the documentary and then going into the memoir, Cracked Wide Open, did it lead you to any addiction issues that you had to deal with and overcome yourself?
To me, drug addiction.
No, I just wondered if suddenly you do the documentary, which is unnerving and very dark, and
Right.
then you get all of the response from it
Yeah.
from places that you didn't anticipate,
Yeah.
and then you get bombarded, as you said, that people want to make you to make movies about them,
Yeah.
and then you're exposed to that much more of that lifestyle, that addiction lifestyle. I just
Right.
wondered if there was any way that you had fallen into I don't know, for a lack of a better word, a PTSD where you had to deal with it in some way yourself.
I think so for sure. I mean, I've over the years I've gone to therapy and talked about it. Yeah, you know, I definitely have. I'll compare it to a drug high with what I went through. Like, you go from when you reach that level of being like on an iconic show like Oprah Winfrey, and then having my film on HBO, like that's where filmmakers die. They have their films end up there. There was nothing like it. And but what was most rewarding about it was the educational part of it. Like I believe that films can still help people. I believe my book can help people. That really gave me, I guess, a purpose. You know, commercial photography was fun, and meeting celebrities is cool, but I never really felt satisfied. This probably goes back to my childhood. And I say in the book, I'm the middle of five kids, and I always felt that I was never noticed in the family. And I believe I seek attention. And it's kind of why I became a photographer and a filmmaker, to get people's attention.
Photography can also take an emotion that maybe you have inside of you, display it to other people so that they feel something through something else, so that it's almost deflected from yourself.
Yeah, the camera's a bit of a something to hide behind, right? And it's a bit of a power tool too. Like, not as much anymore because everybody has the camera on their phone. But back when I was a kid and I had a camera, there weren't many other kids with cameras and stuff. And people will get uncomfortable when you take their picture. Like most people, and still to this day, when I photograph somebody, the first thing they say is, I hate having my picture taken.
Well, the other thing too is if you look at what you've done from a kid, I was in the same boat. That was one of the things that intrigues me, and I am most definitely an amateur photographer, but I have an eye for something, and I don't know what it is, and I'm not blowing smoke up my own ass or anything
Yeah,
like that. It's just I have taken pictures that people have said, "Wow." Like, how did you get that? Where did you get it? Taking a picture of my wife walking down Mercer Street, but instead of just taking a picture of me standing at 6'5" and holding my phone up to my eye, I got down and got the bottom third of the entire picture is all the cobblestone on the streets of
right.
New York, and then all of the the old stables and all of the stuff in that district that are turned into bars from old oil change shops and whatnot. So there's a certain eye that you have. Plus the fact that when we were doing it as kids, and I had one when I was 12, 13, I'd had Pentax MV with all the lenses and the flashes carried
Yeah,
around in my bag. And we were using the camera then and still probably now with our iPhone, we're using it for good, not evil. We're not just taking pictures of our food, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, photography. Write about that in my book too. That like the original. I spent 10 years writing the book. My original title for the book was going to be "Point and Shoot: The Death of Photography." And that was going to revolve around when the iPhone came out, which leveled my business. Like it just when I was getting really good at it, this thing comes out that anybody can take a picture and pretty good pictures right now. And people just stopped paying for professional photography. It was like a tsunami, like photographers just got knocked down. It's interesting when you're talking about taking pictures and you mentioned you got down and the lower third of the picture was the cobblestone. That's in photography. There's the rule of thirds, right? Do you know about that? That
Yes.
then you have a photographic sense to you.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than seeing a picture of somebody from basically the top of the shoulders up, and then 9 yards of sky behind,
Right, right,
behind them. So
right.
you have to zoom in and crop it, and then it becomes all pixelated or whatever. Like
Uh,
you lose the definition of the photo. But the thing is, like you're talking about the book that you took 10 years off and on to write, and the original working title being "Point and Shoot: The Death of Photography." That is a book if I saw in an airport at whatever those bookstores are in the airport, if I saw that, I would have bought it for sure. Point and Shoot: The Death of Photography, because of my eye for that kind of thing.
right.
And from being a kid up until my age now, I'm 60, and just being fascinated by photography and the people who capture the images. Brian Adams is a terrific example of an amazing photographer, but
Yeah.
everybody knows him as a rock star. But he put out, I think he's put out multiple photography books now.
But yeah, he's a great photographer.
Photography, I think, is an art that is underappreciated, and kind of going back to what I mentioned before, where it's for good, not evil, where everybody takes pictures. And if somebody says, "Oh, I got a picture of that," let me scroll through all of the pictures, and you just see the endless parade of pictures that people have stored on their phone. They have 20,000 pictures, but really there's only 2 dozen of them that are worth keeping, that have a memory, that have something. It's screenshots. It's not capturing life. It's not capturing a moment. It's not taking a moment and keeping it forever. It's just a moment. Is that a fair way to put it?
I believe so. Yeah, I mean, this tool, which we're talking on now, and it's a tool that can be used for good. But the difference from when we were younger, like everything's being captured now. Like you're being photographed. I don't know how many hundreds of times a day. Not just with this, but there's cameras are everywhere.
Well, I sure
And,
hope they're getting my good side.
what you say, like people have thousands and thousands and thousands of images ready to scroll through and show you their pictures, which is good. But people are living like we're behind a screen enough most days, right? Whether it's work or watching TV or streaming television shows constantly to being behind this screen. Like, look at concerts. Everybody documents, shoots video of the concert they're at. Yeah, I shouldn't be one to criticize because I used to sneak my camera into concerts. Like, yeah, you literally had to sneak cameras in. If security caught you, you'd be kicked out of the concerts because I wanted to capture it. But it was different back then. It was not everybody was doing it. And now, like, I don't go to that many big concerts anymore. I love live music and I still shoot live music. My daughters go to shows and they send me videos and it's cool, but everybody there's videos of people videotaping. It's
Yeah, all
so
you see is
insane.
a sea of people holding up their camera. And the other, here's another thing. You mentioned that people don't like having their picture taken, and they're very vocal about it. Oh, I hate having my picture taken. Well, here's just something that I have. Part of the reason for this is my own family. And because everybody says, "Oh, we should get a picture," so everybody stands together and they stand there and they look, and then and you say smile, and then somebody gets mad because you say smile. Instead of waiting for everybody to pose for the perfect picture, you take the picture, take 2 or 3 pictures before the pose, take the picture of the pose, and then also take the 3 or 4 pictures after the pose, because you have to get the spontaneous sort of thing. There's nothing better than taking a picture of a human and they don't know the picture is being taken.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a smile. I've done a lot of street photography. I have a Instagram page called the Toronto Portrait Project. I think I started it in 2018 or something. I would create series of ideas. First one I did was called The Wall. As I'm looking at you, I had this fake backdrop that was a brick wall that looks like your wall that you're behind now. And I take it around different areas of Toronto and I tape it to walls and I get people to pose in front of it. And then I did the mask series when COVID-19 hit. And that I didn't use the wall. I just shot people with masks on during the first and second lockdown. And I shot over 500. That's 5 years coming up at 5 years ago this month. And that was one of the most fascinating as a photo. Like people look back and cringe about the lockdown and stuff, but as a photographer, and especially as a portrait photographer, it was one of the coolest things I've ever done. I mean, especially that first lockdown when people were really scared and stayed inside. I was out on my bike going around and trying to convince people, keeping that 6 foot distance, trying to convince people to pose for a portrait. Like people were frightened about just being approached, right?
Yeah.
But I ended up shooting, I believe it's such a colorful capture in one of the darkest times in history. I love those portraits.
The other thing too is even if people have 2/3 of their, you talk about the rule of thirds, you got 2/3 of your mouth covered with a mask.
Yeah.
So much can come through a picture of that last third because everything comes through people's eyes, correct?
Yeah. You're bang on, and photographing people with a mask on was such an interesting thing because you can actually, without seeing their facial expressions, you can tell by people's eyes, right?
Reluctantly.
This podcast is reluctantly sponsored by the real estate team of homegirls.ca, a top producing team at Remax Professionals. If you are buying or selling in the Edmonton area, Shauna and Bonnie can handle everything with strong industry connections to mortgage brokers, home inspectors, lawyers, and contractors to support every step. They can sell your current home and find your new place, whether you're expanding as a family, downsizing as empty nesters, or looking for a commercial space for your growing business. I also know they can help you find your new place in the Edmonton region if you're migrating from Ontario, BC, or any other part of Canada for that matter. I first met Shauna and Bonnie 10 years ago when we were beginning to downsize, and they have been our trusted real estate advisors through buying and selling no less than 6 properties. I've also recommended them to many friends who want real, relatable people with a personalized, hands-on approach. New home, investment, recreational, even commercial. Homegirls.ca is the website. Email info is there, and you can call them at 780-517-HOME.
Reluctantly.
So you go from the move from Montreal to Toronto, the making of the documentary, the 10 years off and on to write the book, the Toronto portraits, the portraits thing, the mask pictures for 5 years. And then all of a sudden, it's 2024 and you decide to get up with no training and go and ride your bike across Canada.
Yeah, I had been for the last 5 years or up to that 2024, like I had kind of been hunkered down in Toronto for various reasons. And I wanted to break away. I felt I needed to get away. And this idea came to me, and it was a crazy idea, but I ended up finding a bit of an art patron who liked what I do and thought it had merit. And I just decided to do it on Canada Day, July 1st, 2024. I left Toronto. I rode east to St. John's, Newfoundland, and then I flew back to Vancouver and then rode east again to Toronto.
So hopefully you had that west wind at your back the whole time.
Well, I don't know if you've seen the film, but.
I watched it last night. Yes, I have.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
So thank you.
Sure. It's available on YouTube, by the way. It's called My Own Private Pilgrimage.
Yeah, anybody can watch it. And I'm not the first person to make a film. Most people who ride across Canada or do something like that, document it. And they're usually doing it for a bit of a cause, my cause was to bring awareness to mental health issues because of the work I had done. But I've watched, since I finished my film, I started watching other people's films. And I go, I don't know. I mean, if it was luck or what, but the weather I had maybe 2 days of rain in 66 days. Otherwise, it was just beautiful. I usually had the wind at my back, and I didn't think I was going to make it. Like I say it at the beginning of the film, if I was like being honest with myself, especially when I started going. But I just thought, no matter how far I go, something will come out. Hopefully something positive will come out of it, even if I didn't make it the whole way.
I think for me, the biggest thing, aside from the fact that you were 64 and decided you were going to all of a sudden ride your bike across Canada, you left from Toronto, went east, which kind of surprised me. As I was watching it, I was trying to figure out how this was all going to work. Then I once you got on the plane from Newfoundland and headed, and I went, oh, okay, that's what he's doing. He's going that way and then across, so to back to where he was, instead of going out to Newfoundland and starting and then going to Vancouver and then having to fly back to Toronto, sort of thing. So I thought that was interesting. The other thing I thought was really neat was it was a rudimentary kind of process for capturing it all, because you didn't have a crew with you. You had some sort of contraption or what. I don't know how the technology works with having it's almost like there's a drone in front of you filming you as you pedal, and then you can look off to the side, you can see the roadkill, you can see the mountains and the trains and the cars and stuff. And I thought the way that you captured everything was very interesting. The other thing that really struck me was the fact that you didn't have a crew, and there's really no fanfare. I mean, you didn't have a television crew behind you. There was no newspaper or radio interviews that we could see in the documentary. You were just going there to ride into town, do your thing, and then ride out of town. It was all very discreet and unpublicized, and let's say it was not like there was no self bravado that was involved with it, it was just, it seemed like as much a personal journey as it was for something that was going to be something that could possibly be seen on YouTube down the road.
For sure it was. Yeah. Listen, you spend 8 hours a day on a bike by yourself, not knowing where you're going to end up. You have a lot of time to process things. I mean, I call it my own private pilgrimage. It was a pilgrimage as you go out looking for something. I wasn't really looking for anything in specific, other than I believe I was going to be led to where I should be, end up, and I was. Like, I look at it now, and it is a crazy kind of concept, and it's sort of how my work as a photographer and as a filmmaker, I believe, to get really good stuff, the less planning you do, the better.
If you're spending 8 hours a day on a bike and you have such a solitary experience, there has got to be times where you've got a song stuck in your head and it just won't go away. What song was it?
Well, it's funny. I didn't listen to much music. People said, do you ride with music, like listening off your phone? And I didn't.
Like an earworm, one that just wouldn't go away, and you think, "Oh God,
I'm trying to think.
This girl is on fire," like a Katie
I
Harris.
love country music, so it had to be a country song, sad song.
Hold my beer while I kiss your girlfriend.
But as far as what you were mentioning before, what I wanted the viewers to experience was what it was like to ride, like my point of view. So pretty much the whole film is shot on the bike, right? And I used, camera wise, 90% of it was shot with this phone, handheld. I had a gimbal too, but usually I didn't have time to set up. Like, as I'm riding, if I saw something, I'd pull the phone out as I'm riding on the highway or a road, loosely frame it, and shoot and see what I got. The other camera, which you're talking about the drone like shots, it's a 360 camera, which is mounted on the bike, but the pole is invisible. So it looks like a drone, but it's much easier to use. I had never used that before I went on the trip. I'd never really camped by myself before. Like, the first time I set up my tent was the first time I set up my tent. And I'm not a bike mechanic. Like, I had 2 flat tires on the trip. Okay, 5,400 kilometers. Both flat tires happened within an hour of each other.
Oh, wow.
The ironic thing is, if I didn't have those 2 flat tires, it actually helped me get forward, because I was trying to get somewhere and I was behind schedule, and I probably wouldn't have made it by biking it, but because I had the flat tire, somebody picked me up and getting to Winnipeg. And so I didn't completely ride across Canada. I took a bus from Winnipeg to Sudbury. A lot of people had warned me about that. When you go north through northern Ontario, it is pretty barren and tons of trucks. And a lot of people just said you shouldn't do it, especially alone. And I was getting tired at that point too. So I took a
And
bus.
the fact that you had some pretty nasty weather that was coming up as well, according to the footage on the bus.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the few rain days, and there I was on a bus. Like, I was sitting on that bus going, man, if I was on my bike, I'd be crying at the side of the road, or I would have quit. I mean, there was a lot of factors like weather and wind that really kept.
I am inspired by, I just turned 60. I'm assuming that you're 65 now.
Yep.
Okay. I'm inspired by, I'm not going to start riding my bike across Canada tomorrow, but I'm inspired by what you did and the documentation of it. Were you inspired? Like, there's been some people, Ewan McGregor, I believe, is the actor. Didn't he ride his motorcycle from the tip of
Yeah.
the north all the way down to the tip of the South America or some such thing.
Yeah.
I think he did it in Africa as well or whatever.
Yeah. I think you wrote a book about it too, right?
Yeah. I think to Neil Peart of Rush, who also rode a motorcycle. I know it's different than bicycle, but
Yeah.
and then documenting it through a book and that sort of thing. I was smiling a lot watching the movie last night, thinking that this must have been such a unique experience and given you every emotion you could possibly absorb, everything from fear, you're probably terrified at some point. If
Every day.
yeah, like, were there any close calls with some vehicles?
I rode a lot of highways. Like I was riding the Trans Canada because it's easier. Like the side roads, you encounter more hills and lots of detours. So yeah, I mean, there's nothing bad happened in that way, other than there's 18-wheel trucks speeding by you at a foot and a half away from you. I mean, my main concern was that people would be on their phone and not see me and get wiped out like that. Like there's a section, as you mentioned, that I photographed roadkill along the way. And every time I saw a roadkill, I would literally thank God that that could have happened to me. So I wanted the film to, I hope it inspires people. You can do practically anything you put your mind to. It doesn't have to be a bike across Canada. I think a lot of people don't do a lot of things out of fear. Like fear is a great distractor for accomplishing things. And I had fear all the time. Yeah, I got lost one day. That there's a section in the film where I got lost in New Brunswick,
In
and
Miramichi.
in going to Miramichi, and it again. I've seen other people who have done bike trips, and I go, okay, quit being a whiny baby. Like when you're in the middle of nowhere for 4 hours, you haven't seen anyone, and there's no signs, and the phone's not telling you where you are. Like I was scared shitless.
Yeah.
And after about 4 hours, like I'm still going, and all of a sudden I see two guys on four-wheel ATVs come out of nowhere, and they approach me and they're looking at me like, "What the fuck are you doing here?" And I was so happy. It's like, well, I didn't know it could have been a deliverance type of experience, but like they had guns and everything.
Yeah. But
Anyways,
you didn't hear a banjo off in the distance or anything, did
like knock on wood. Um, but just to see somebody was
you? Yeah.
made me feel better. Anyways, they stop and I go, I'm trying to get to Miramichi. Uh, Am I on the right road? And they go, well, I don't think you're on the right road, but you can get there. And I'm going, oh, phew. And I was kept thinking like, uh, and it was my Matt that took me to this route, right? It was such a beautiful day and the morning had been so beautiful. Like I was taking back roads, and all of a sudden I get to this dirt road and I'm going, and I looked at it and I didn't couldn't really figure out how long it was, but I decided to do it instead of going back. Like there was the other option was going back and then going on a huge detour, and I just didn't want to do that. So yeah, they said I'm hoping they're going to go, yeah, just another kilometer, take a right, but it was another like I don't know 8 or 9 miles, and they said they were going fishing or hunting or something. They said we're coming back this way, so we'll look for you.
Would have been great to meet up for a beer with those guys after.
Yeah.
Uh,
But that was terrifying, but rewarding too. Like it made a good story and it made for a cool little part of the film. Like,
it really
um,
was, yeah. It made me the first thing that popped into my head was Wrong Way Feldman from Gilligan's Island, right? And then I'm thinking, and you could see you come up, you're coming down the pavement, and all of a sudden you see the dirt road, and I saw you go, oh fuck! He said you could hear off, kind of off camera almost. And I thought, oh, here we go. Here's
Well,
an
yeah,
adventure part of it.
I say fuck, 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 because I knew I had a decision to make right there.
Yeah,
And then as I get into Miramichi, there's a bagpipers playing whatever the bagpipers play, and it was like kind of this welcome to the Irish capital of Canada,
yeah.
which I had no idea.
After that many hours on a dirt road, you're welcome to Miramichi by bagpipes.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah.
you know what they say about a gentleman is a man who knows how to play the bagpipes, but doesn't.
I was happy to hear the bagpipes, and I was happy
I
to
bet
hear
you were.
anything.
I bet you were. You know, Paul, first of all, let's just kind of recap. The documentary Cracked, Not Broken is available on Apple TV. You can buy the book Cracked Wide Open. It's available on Amazon as a
Yeah.
paperback and as a Kindle reader or whatever they call those. And then go ahead and look for My Own Private Pilgrimage, which is available on YouTube. And like I said, I watched it last night. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I admire you, and I thank you so much for telling your story here today.
Thanks so much, Terry. It's a pleasure, and I really appreciate you taking the time and talking to me.
Reluctantly.
Today's podcast brought to you by Homegirls.ca, a top producing team at Remax Professionals and Northern Alberta Heating. Work in and out of Edmonton. They're looking for sheet metal workers. Resumes to Tim at northernheating.ca. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it.
Reluctantly.